This is Putin's war. These are Putin's increases, and we cannot allow it to stand. So it may take a bit. In this sacrifice, we are fortunate that we are not being asked to sacrifice our sons and daughters to go and fight this war, but we may have to take on other sacrifices. And it makes me so proud that so many Americans are willing to pay a little bit more at the pump in order to accelerate the end of this war.
To that very point, new polling shows 79% of Americans say they support a ban on Russian oil, even if gas prices do go up. As the U.S. and allies are putting the squeeze on Putin's economy, private companies are reacting as well. Today, after apologizing for buying a huge shipment of Russian oil last week, Shell announced it is stopping all purchases of Russian oil and gas. And add McDonald's, Starbucks, and Coca-Cola to the list of corporations no longer doing business in Russia. Let's dig in. With us tonight, Gillian Tett, the chair of the editorial board and editor-at-large for the Financial Times, and Liz Hoffman, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Liz, we get less than 10% of our oil from Russia, and our European allies, they're not in a position to drop Russia cold turkey. So how much is this move going to hurt them?
That's right. It's largely symbolic in the U.S. I think it's more problematic abroad for political reasons, too. You know, this is the first sort of bit of daylight that's been between the U.S. and our European allies. You know, and what it also does is it jacks up the price of energy even more. You know, it's been soaring in the last couple of weeks. So that means that what Russia is able to sell in Europe, they're making more money, which is not what anyone had in mind here.
Gillian, now that Biden has to go to the likes of Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and potentially Iran to try and get more oil, these are not people that you want to get help from. Could this actually push us to use less oil and gas, actually move forward with a green agenda?
Well, there's two ways to look at this from the point of view of the green agenda. That, first of all, in the short term, there is definitely a scramble to restart fossil fuel activity. You've seen American officials talking about trying to get more shale gas going. You see them talking to groups like Venezuela. There's a real recognition that actually getting fossil fuel supplies right now is of great importance. The hope, of course, though, is that in the medium to longer term, as prices get higher, this is going to spark more investment in green, renewable energy sources. Now, there's a problem with that in the short term, which is that many of the components you need to actually get green energy going actually come from supply chains that are linked to Russia. So you're seeing an awful lot of what people call greenflation at the moment, inflation around green energy sources right now, on top of the type of inflation you may get coming down the track, or will get coming down the tracks because of higher oil prices. But I think one thing that's fascinating as a sign of the shifting zeitgeist is just how frequently the word sacrifice is being tossed around. I mean, people used to say it was all about the economy, stupid. Now it appears to be more than just about the economy, stupid. It's actually about bigger issues as well, as far as the administration is concerned, and also, it seems, many voters.
Well, if the answer is put our own troops on the front line or pay more for gas, it changes everything. Liz, we did hear the president use the bully pulpit to say to all of these big oil and gas companies, this is not a time to price gouge. That is hugely popular politically. Nobody likes the big guy. But when it comes down to it, how do we actually judge that? Because these companies are going to say, listen, we're facing higher prices. This is how it works. How do we evaluate it and then execute on it?
They are going to say that, and there's probably some truth to it. There's a lot of pieces that, you know, there's a lot of components in gas prices. Financing is going to get tighter. You know, they're going to have much tougher terms from their lenders, and collateral is not worth what it used to be. So there's a lot of financial inputs into that. I think it'll be very hard, and it's honestly really a political question. It's going to be a topic for the midterms, depending on how long this goes on. But, you know, like teasing out the inputs into gas prices is very hard to do, and I think it's sort of a fool's errand.
Gillian, in the short term, Russia is going to now have a whole bunch of content, oil and gas, on the cheap. Any chance we see India or China come in and buy it? Thus far, you know, we haven't heard much from China.
Well, that is one of the most interesting questions right now, the attitude of the Chinese, because there was a lot of speculation that Chinese banks would step in as Western banks pull back, and the whole ban on or rather tossing Russia out of the SWIFT financial messaging system was announced. But we've not seen much evidence of Chinese banks actively trying to help the Russian ones thus far. We saw some reports today of the Chinese talking about going in and buying up some of or buying stakes in Russian commodity companies. But that seems to be as much as anything opportunistic and could probably be done on price gouging terms as much as anything else, rather than an attempt to help Russia. So it's something that everyone's watching very, very closely indeed. But the one thing I would say, going back to the point about talking about sacrifice, talking about price gouging, it's worth stepping back and thinking this is a really different type of zeitgeist and rhetoric from what we were seeing 10, 20 years ago in terms of the relationship between business and government. In some ways, it started during the COVID-19 pandemic, when businesses were collaborating with each other and collaborating with government to try and deal with the pandemic. But what we're seeing around the Ukrainian war is really, accelerating this and redefining some of the ways that business is being organized or being visualized at the moment.
Well, then, Gillian, last week when you and I were talking about the economic sanctions, they've only gotten worse since then. We're now seeing all of these businesses pull out. We're now seeing the ban on Russian oil. You had said Putin's not going to care, the oligarchs won't care, but the next level down in sort of Russian society hierarchy, they will. Do you see things getting worse?
Absolutely. I mean, I spent, years of my life in the former Soviet Union and the Soviet Union when it was a Soviet Union. And I remember when McDonald's came into Moscow, and it was such a big moment in terms of signaling that Russia was joining the global economy, capitalist symbols were coming in. And the fact that that has been ripped away so suddenly and so dramatically, and you have an entire generation of middle-class Russians who thought they had access to the world and had access to many of the luxuries, or not even the luxuries, the everyday aspects of Western life, thought they could travel, thought they could have aspirations, thought they could have, Apple gadgets that worked, et cetera, et cetera. The fact that that has been ripped away so fast is going to be very bruising. It will take a while until the full impact of that really sinks in. For the older generation, who are astonishingly stoic and good at surviving hardship, many of them may shrug their shoulders. But it's the people in the 20s and 30s who have suddenly suffered this dramatic shock who we really need to watch going forward. And also the upper echelons, the middle upper echelons, bureaucrats and officials who are suddenly seeing what they thought was their company lifestyle disappearing as well, who could be very important.